The dad that Sheldon Cooper spent his whole life painting as the big villain of his childhood? He wasn't one, not even close. And here's the weird part. The show itself proved it. And the guy who spent years trashing him in the very end admitted all of it. If you only know George Sr. from The Big Bang Theory, you've got a pretty specific picture of him stuck in your head. A drunk, a cheater, the guy who got so mad at a football game one time that he shot the TV. The dad who, the way Sheldon tells it, just coasted through life until the day he died. Basically a Texas Homer Simpson, minus the jokes. Sheldon even told this story about his dad running off with some bleach blonde bartender, and how she tried to buy little Sheldon's love with superhero action figures. And we just bought all of it. Why wouldn't we? Sheldon's the narrator. Who's gonna argue with a guy about his own childhood? And then young Sheldon came out, and for the first time, we got to actually watch this guy, not through bitter memories, but live. 7 seasons of him. And this is where it gets really uncomfortable. The man on screen and the man from those stories feel like two completely different George. And the longer you watch, the more it hits you. Honestly, it still kind of bugs me, because when you grow up on The Big Bang Theory, you're used to Sheldon's dad being this walking punchline about a loser. And then you put on young Sheldon and catch yourself actually feeling sorry for the guy, and you start to get mad. Not at him, at how he got remembered. So get comfy on Cooper's couch, because today he's the one we're breaking down. George Cooper Sr., the man they cast as the villain even though he never was one. And I'm going to show you where this huge gap even came from. The gap between who he actually was and who his own son remembered him as. I already made a video about George, but that one had a totally different angle. So go rewatch it on my channel. Let me start here with that one line, coasted through life until the day he died. Sit with that. That's a son talking about his dad. Not just we didn't get along, but literally lazy, useless. A guy who never reached for anything. And that picture sticks in the viewer's head. Lazy loser dad. Easy to picture, right? Now watch what one single moment does to that picture. Little Sheldon once recorded himself on a VHS tape, kind of a motivational pep talk for himself. And his dad went and taped a football game right over it. And at first glance, that fits the careless dad story perfectly. A guy who couldn't care less about his son's stuff. Classic George. But here's the twist. What got recorded over it is George's own speech. Him talking to his losing team in the locker room. And years later, adult Sheldon, a scientist now, finds this tape. And he's at rock bottom in that moment. His big theory just got ripped to shreds. He's ready to quit everything. And right then, his dead father speaks to him from the screen. And you know what George tells his team? Something like, "We're losing, boys. Honestly, we're definitely not going to win this one. But we're not going to quit either. And if we do lose, you need to know that doesn't make you losers. You learn as much about who you are and what you're made of from failing as you do from success. Maybe more. So get out there and give them hell." And adult Sheldon watches it and quietly goes, "Thanks, Dad. We're going to give him hell." And that speech literally pushes him toward the breakthrough that wins him the Nobel. The man his own son called a lazy loser who just coasted reached him from the grave and basically handed him a Nobel Prize. That same useless dad. And once that sinks in, the whole "he just coasted through life" label falls apart. By the way, you know what the Cooper family was always tripping over? Money. Mary kept saying they were poor. Missy wore hand-me-downs. In 1980s Texas, an extra dollar was worth its weight in gold. And that brings me to who's backing today's video, Free Cash. Quick version, it's a platform where you can make a little extra cash doing simple stuff. And here's the important part. It doesn't ask for any money up front. You don't have to put in anything. You just hop on, do tasks, take surveys, test apps, play games, and you get coins for it, which you then swap for real money. Crypto, or gift cards. I actually poked around on it myself while making this video. There are a ton of offers. You just scroll and pick whatever you're into. Some want you to fill out a survey, some just want you to play a mobile game and hit a certain level. The layout's simple. You can figure it out in a couple minutes. No catch like, put your own money in first. You can cash out starting at $25. And by the way, the service has a 4.8 on Trustpilot and thousands of reviews. So if you want to mess around with it yourself, click the link in the pinned comment or in the description of this video, or scan the QR code on screen. That one also gets you a $10 bonus to start once you sign up and finish your first game. Thanks to Free Cash for sponsoring this episode. And now back to George and the heaviest accusation against him. This is the part that, honestly, I think made this whole video worth making. The 3 knocks. Anybody who watched The Big Bang Theory knows Sheldon always knocks 3 times. Always. And he explained once where it came from. And the explanation is, to put it lightly, rough. He said that as a kid, on a break from school, he came home and caught his dad in bed with another woman. Some blonde, they locked eyes, he ran off, and they never talked about it. That's where the 3 knocks come from. One is just a knock, and the second and third are to give people time to put their pants on. That's the worst thing Sheldon has ever said about his father, a cheater. And for about 10 years, that's just a fact. That's who George is. And then young Sheldon goes and replays that exact same scene, beat for beat. Sheldon comes home, this time from Germany, walks into the house, hears his dad with some blonde, she's got a German accent, George is moaning, "Oh, Helga." Sheldon runs off. Same scene, same memory. Only this time, they show us the whole thing. And the blonde in the wig is Mary, his mom. She just decided to surprise her husband with a little role play, using a wig she brought back from Germany. There was no other woman. George never cheated. Sheldon never finds out the truth. To this day, in his head, his dad's a cheater. He carried that around his entire life, spent his entire life thinking worse of him than he deserved, and none of it is even true. And this isn't me making something up so it lands nicer. The show's showrunner straight up confirmed it in an interview. He basically said, Sheldon never realized it was Mary, he's still sure he caught his dad. And there's a real sadness in that he carried it all these years. The most horrifying accusation against George, the one thing that actually made him look like a villain, was a mistake, a misunderstanding. A scared 13-year-old saw something that wasn't real, ran off, and never asked about it again, and built a whole version of his father on top of it. I thought about that for a long time afterward, because it changes everything. If you take away the cheating, and there was none, then what's left against George? Literally nothing. Okay, so the cheating's handled. That leaves probably the biggest one. Bad father. Cold. Distant. The kind who, if you believe Sheldon, barely even noticed him. On The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon said his dad made him watch football before he was allowed to do his homework. Called it the longest 7 years of his life. And again, sounds like a tyrant who couldn't care less about his kids' interests. But in the prequel, it's the exact opposite. George knows perfectly well his son has zero use for football, and he doesn't try to drag him into it. He looks for something else, somewhere their two worlds can actually overlap a little. And here's where another dark story pops up. On The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon bragged that at 10 years old, in 10 minutes he figured out who was stealing money from the register at a store, and it turned out to be his own dad. He turned him in, George got fired, and the boy got ice cream. Pretty creepy when you sit with it. Except in young Sheldon, George is a coach. No register, no stealing. His work problems are about something completely different and way more honorable. And again, what adult Sheldon said and what's actually on screen just don't line up. And later, when he worked for Dale, he didn't steal anything either. Now watch what this distant dad actually does. When some NASA engineer casually stomped all over Sheldon's idea for how to land a rocket, the kid got so stressed his stomach started hurting. And what does George do? He loads the whole family in the car and drives them to Houston so his son's idea at least gets heard. He doesn't understand a single word of the science. But he stands up for his son when it would have been way easier to just brush it off. And it goes further. He takes Sheldon to a rocket launch. The rain ruins everything. No launch. His son's crushed. And George doesn't grumble. He starts asking him about thunder and lightning, because he knows his boy loves talking about science. And when Sheldon refuses to leave in the rain, his dad just picks him up and carries him to the car in his arms. Adult Sheldon later calls that trip the best one of his life. They fly together to Caltech for a lecture. Sheldon panics on the plane, and George, to calm him down, starts a game. He's Captain Kirk and Sheldon's Spock. This man, the one people called a dumb hick, found the one language his son would actually hear him in right then. And it's like that constantly. Before Sheldon runs for class president, he convinces his terrified kid that he's got this. When Sheldon's stubbornness brings the IRS down on them and he bolts from the meeting, his dad talks him into coming back and seeing it through. He even helps record a video so Mary will let Sheldon start college early. So there's your dad who never noticed me. He noticed, just not the way Sheldon needed. He didn't get what was going on in his son's head, but over and over he got what was going on in his heart. And honestly, not a lot of smart people can do that. Since we're crossing the accusations off one by one, here's another. That he gave the family nothing. A loser who couldn't provide for his own. For most of the show, George is a high school football coach who can barely make ends meet. Money's always tight, Missy keeps saying they're poor. And against that backdrop, it's easy to decide, yeah, the guy just couldn't cut it. But if you look closer, it's the opposite. He'd been offered a better job before, a college coaching spot in Oklahoma, in Tulsa. He went out there, did the interview, and turned it down. So he wouldn't uproot the family so he could keep them in Texas. And Sheldon, by the way, never even understood what his dad gave up that day. He just didn't notice. And he's got plenty of moves like that. When George got pushed out of his coaching job, and it got handed to his assistant, Wayne Wilkins, Wilkins' family later falls apart. And what does George do? He takes him in and refuses to take his old job back until the school helps Wilkins out too. He splits the position with the guy who took his spot. He even lets a young pastor, the same one his wife was drawn to, lead the team in prayer one time, just to help Wilkins out. One reviewer called it almost too decent. And that, by the way, is the complete opposite of that lazy couch potato from The Big Bang Theory. And now, the bitterest part. Near the end, George finally gets it. That one dream job. Coach at Rice University, the big leagues. He tells his family, see you all later, and that same day he dies of a heart attack, right there at work, never even getting to start. The creators themselves later said they wrote that Rice offer in on purpose to give George a win, after all his sacrifices, and then they killed him right before he could have it. Even Chuck Lorre, the guy who came up with all of this, wrote afterward that they regret ever making George's death part of the story, that the whole crew had fallen in love with this made-up man. So yeah, the loser who gave his family nothing spent his whole life turning down better jobs for that exact family and died on the one single day luck finally turned his way. If that's a villain, then I don't know who counts as a good guy anymore. Okay, here's where you might catch me. Hold on, but he really did drink. And let me say right away, I'm not going to turn him into a saint because that's exactly where breakdowns like this usually fall apart. Yeah, George drank. That's true. There's almost always a can of beer in his hand. Lone Star is basically its own character on the show. Mary's always nagging him about it. No arguing with that. But here's where it gets interesting, because how he got remembered and what's actually shown, once again, don't match. In the memories, he's a hopeless drunk. A guy who, if you believe the retellings, once drunkenly picked a fight with a cactus. Though honestly, I love this part. In the actual scene, the word drunk isn't there at all. Some fan just added that on and stuck it to the story. Small thing, but it shows how these stories pick up details. There was also a bit about his son sneaking into his truck and drinking his road whiskey. And the crowning one, that when George died, the local liquor store owner supposedly cried and cried because he'd lost his best customer. And here's where young Sheldon plays it smart. It doesn't confirm that version, and it doesn't pretend it never happened. George drinks, but he's not the stumbling, falling, family-wrecking alcoholic from the stories. He works, he shows up, he functions. And that story about the sobbing liquor store guy? Watch what actually turns out. At the funeral, Meemaw, the grandma, cracks a joke to lighten the mood. Something like, the Lone Star Company flag is at half-mast now that George is gone. It was a joke, to make people feel a little better in an awful moment. And a scared, grieving kid turned a funeral joke into, my dad was such a drunk that the liquor store guy cried over him. Same exact facts, completely different man. The drinking was real, but drunk That's the version somebody painted on top. And you know what? After that, you start listening to all his stories about his dad differently. Want the cleanest proof of who George actually was? Watch him next to Missy. There are zero loser jokes here. There's this scene, I think fans love it more than any other. George doesn't know how to spend time with his daughter. He even admits it to Mary, like, I just don't know what to talk to her about. And Mary gives him this almost laughably simple advice. Find out what she likes and do it with her. And what does George do? He puts on a suit, Missy dresses up in a princess dress, and he takes her to Red Lobster. To her, that's the fanciest restaurant in all of Texas. He pulls out her chair, teaches her how to eat lobster, makes her feel special, just so his little girl can have her own royal night. And now the part that gets me every single time. At the funeral, they bury George in that exact suit, the one he wore taking Missy to dinner. And Missy walks up to the casket and thanks him for everything. And it's not a one-time thing. Remember the tornado. George stops the car, drags Missy into a ditch by the side of the road, lies down on top of her, and covers her head with his hand, shields her with his own body, just so nothing happens to her. That right there, not a villain. That's a father who didn't have the right words, so he spoke with actions. He couldn't say, I love you, the way his kids needed to hear it. But he put on a suit, took his daughter out for lobster, and laid down on top of her in a tornado. That's louder than any words. By the way, in the very finale, there's one more detail that flips everything. Adult Sheldon remembers that his dad often played dumber than he was on purpose, just to make Sheldon feel better. Sit with that. The man his son thought was slow sometimes played slow on purpose. For his son, and not just with Missy. Take the older one, Georgie. With him, it's way more complicated. They're always butting heads. But if you look closer, it's the same story. In the pilot, Georgie's sulking, and instead of warm words, his dad gives him a coach's pep talk. Georgie flat out asks, "What about my dad?" And George answers, "Your dad's having a bad day. Listen to your coach." Yeah, that's his weak spot. He hides behind the coach when his son needs the dad. But even that is an attempt to support him somehow, in the only way he knows how. And here's the moment that really shows who he is. When Georgie admits Mandy's pregnant, George's first reaction is anger. What is wrong with you? And that's, understandable. He himself once got Mary pregnant young and married her so there wouldn't be a scandal. He sees himself in his son. But here's the main thing. He doesn't kick him out, doesn't abandon him. He stays. He helps. He pulls that weight right alongside him, and like Mima says later, a truly bad father would have just left. And when George was gone, it's Georgie who takes the whole family on his shoulders, looks after grief-crushed Mary and teenage Missy while Sheldon heads off to Caltech. That same son who got nagged forever about his bad grades and dropping out becomes the one keeping everyone afloat. And later he raises money for a memorial plaque with his dad's name on it at the stadium. He's literally trying to keep George's name alive. And in the spin-off, when things get really hard for him, he goes to the grave to talk to his dad, like George is still his compass. Here's the whole point. George didn't leave behind a pile of money. He left behind a son who became a man precisely because his dad didn't walk out back then. That's the inheritance, just not the kind you notice right away. And here's an important point, or this whole thing isn't honest. The show doesn't turn George into a saint, and that's exactly why you believe in him. There was Brenda, the neighbor. When George's marriage cracked, he got closer to her than he should have. Fixing stuff around her house, those quiet meetups, sort of by the chicken coop, he was drawn to her, and he knew it. It never physically became cheating. The one night something might have actually happened, a heart attack cut it off. But emotionally, he drifted. And Mary, by the way, drifted too, in her case toward the young pastor. So the marriage really was on the edge, for real. And here's George at his worst. At the hospital, while Georgie's wife is giving birth, he corners Mary about her feelings for the pastor and the whole time stays quiet about his own thing with Brenda. Pure hypocrisy, demanding honesty from her that he won't give himself. And while all this is going on, he forgets to pick Missy up from school. Didn't even make sure she was at the hospital when the baby was born. And his own daughter feels like she's nothing. She snaps at a teacher, steals the keys to his truck, and drives off alone in the middle of the night. So no, George is not a saint. He drank, he sulked and felt sorry for himself when his pride cost him his job. He almost strayed. He hurt his own daughter. All of that happened. And you know how it all ended? They didn't get divorced. They pulled it through. By season 7, Mary goes to Germany, writes him letters from there, and in one she says something like, "Who would have thought I'd have a romance in Germany, and that it'd be with my own husband?" That's Mary, the same one who, on The Big Bang Theory, couldn't find a kind word for him. The marriage didn't fall apart before his death. The opposite, it got warm again. Which, again, flat out contradicts the story about the parents who were always at each other's throats. But here's the whole thing. A husband with a ton of flaws who's going through a rough patch and a villain are very different things, and this whole gap, this whole gulf between the real George and that monster from the memories, it all comes down to exactly one thing: who's telling the story. And here's where the show does something really smart. It explains itself why the two Georges don't match. In the finale, it turns out all of young Sheldon is basically adult Sheldon's memoir. He's writing it. Amy literally calls him an unreliable narrator to his face. And it all clicks into place. The Big Bang Theory wasn't lying to us. It was just a grieving, emotionally blind kid who told the meanest version of every story. And young Sheldon is that same person, except now he's a father himself, and he finally sees his dad for who he really was. The creators said exactly that. Sheldon's telling these stories from a new vantage point now, because he became a parent himself. And look who gets the final word. Meemaw, who for years kept insisting George wasn't good enough for her daughter, who fought with him over a brisket recipe, stands up at the funeral and says he only ever had eyes for Mary, that over time he earned her respect, and that she'll always be proud to call him her son. The person who was hardest on him delivers the verdict. And then Sheldon himself, the same one who called him a drunk hick. At the funeral, now grown, he says he spent way too long looking only at his father's flaws. And now, with kids of his own, he gets it. George was just a man who tried his best and did a lot. I loved my father, and I'll miss him forever. And here's the cruelest detail in all of it. In reality, at the actual funeral, Sheldon doesn't even stand up to say it. He imagines giving this beautiful speech and just stays in his seat. He only says these words later, as the narrator, and that's the whole tragedy in one image. The love was always there, he just didn't get it out in time. So now, when I watch The Big Bang Theory and Sheldon drops some little jab about his useless father, I don't hear a fact in it anymore. I hear a kid who lost his dad at 14 and never learned how to miss him out loud. George wasn't a villain. He was a guy who tried his best with a son he couldn't understand, and a heart that stopped on the exact day luck finally turned his way. And once you start seeing him like that, you can't unsee it. And we've got plenty more stories like this one, the kind that flip the whole show upside down, sitting right here on this couch, so this breakdown is definitely not the last. Make sure to check out the videos on Brenda Sparks and Audrey McAllister.